Hello, students. This is Alan Gilmore, and today we are moving into Modular 10, Chapter 10, and we are going to be looking at the needs of children, youth, and families. So, one of the things that we would normally have done as a class, but I still wanted to try to incorporate this question um, is the idea of what is it that defines a family today? Um, as we make our way through the modular, we're going to find that there are a lot of different ways that people think about the family system today, that it's very different than maybe what we were thinking about 20 or 30 years ago. And that we as social workers have to be prepared for all of the diversity that is occurring in terms of how people are defining themselves as a family. So um, give that some thought for just a second and just kind of answer it for yourself. How do we define a family today? Maybe what you do is you look at your own family system and you learn that your family doesn't look like other families that you're aware of, or maybe it's very similar to a lot of other families that you're aware of. But of course, every family is different and every family is unique. So continuing with the theme of what is a family, the textbook defines a family as an entity that is defined as a group of individuals who are bonded together through marriage, kinship, adoption, or mutual agreement. I think we all recognize what marriage is, and we certainly do know now that we have both opposite sex as well as same sex marriage. Kinship is really about blood relations. And so kinship might include a grandparent who lives in the home. Sorry. An aunt, an uncle, um, a relative of some kind that's somewhat outside of the norm of what we traditionally think of as a family. Adoption certainly can play a role in terms of building or creating a family. And then a family actually can be identified through mutual agreement, meaning that two people decide that they are going to identify each other as their family members with no marriage, with no kinship, and no adoption involved. Again, from the textbook, the definition goes on to say any group of individuals who live together and who are expected to perform specific functions, especially in reference to the children that are involved. So when you have children in a family, often the family's ability and functioning and focus is about raising children. And so people may often come together either in a marriage or in a mutual agreement um, in terms of identifying that their function is to raise the children that might be involved. And again, sometimes those children are not one of the individual's biological child, but again, that's the unique definitions of families. Um, so the family is like no other system because no system has more of an impact on an individual throughout their life cycle than the family. Um, think about your family. Think about what you learned from them, how you emerged as an adult from your experience of being a part of that family. In some situations, there may have been challenges. In some situations, it may have been a very loving and positive relationship. But the bottom line is we all walk out of that situation of being a part of that family um, with uh, things that we take with us into adulthood. And it's fair to say that no two families are alike. Each family system is unique. The families in the 50s, 60s, and 70s traditionally consisted of a husband and wife and two or more children. what we typically would have referred to as a nuclear family. And of course, that's a very different picture compared to today. In 2016, almost 1/4 of children 17 and under were living with their mother in single parent households. 10% of children 17 and under were living in a family system with a step parent. So that just begins to kind of explore all of the diversity and differences in terms of what a family looks like. So this graph takes a look at the living arrangements in the United States for children. And you'll see that there are these different graphs. And the top graph, which is in the purple, is the graph of living with two married parents. And you can see between the years of 1958 and 2014, a pretty consistent decline in terms of families being identified as those living with two married parents, from 87.7% of all families in the United States in 1958 to 64.4% in 2014. You'll see the blue line where there is a steady increase over time, and that is the families that are being raised by a mother only. You see the green line, which is relatively low on the bottom, and that is families that are being headed by a father only. And then finally, you'll see the sort of what we used to call sky blue, kind of a light blue color of living with no parent. So this might be a child who's in foster care. This could be a child who's living with grandparents. Could be a variety of different kinds of situations. But you'll see that there's been an increase in both the father only, living with no parent, and certainly in the mother only, while we've seen a decrease in the living with two married parents. This takes a look at ethnicity and the family structure. What we see here is those that are in the kind of bright blue are non-Hispanic whites. Those in the green are Black or African American. Those in the lighter blue are Hispanic. And those that are, those that are in the light green are Asian. And so you can see over time, the number of families that are living with two married parents, where you'll see that the highest number appears to be in the Asian community, and the lowest number seems to be in the African American community. Those that are living with mother only, the highest is in the African American community, and the lowest is in the Asian community. Those living with father only, highest is in the non-Hispanic white category, and the lowest is in the Asian community. And then living with no parent, again, this would be in foster care with a grandparent or other relatives. The highest is in the African American community, and the lowest is in the Asian community. So you can see that the status of the family is quite reflective of various ethnicities, and that various ethnicities are experiencing more or less of one type of family structure that seems to be correlated to race and ethnicity. Grandparents, 7.0 million is the number of grandparents whose grandchildren younger than 18 were living with them in 2010. That's when we conducted our last census. 2.7 million, this is the number of grandparents responsible for the basic needs of one or more grandchildren under 18 living with them in 2010. Of these caregivers, 1.7 million were grandmothers and 1.0 million were grandfathers. 10%, that's the percentage of children in the US that are living with a grandparent in 2010, totaling 7.5 million. So this is a emerging and unique set of circumstances. There are a variety of reasons why children may find themselves being under the supervision and care of their grandparents. There could be an issue of having experienced the death of a parent. There could be a parent who becomes incarcerated. There could be a parent who perhaps is an unfit parent, and therefore the grandparents are the ones who are assuming custody of the children. So there can be a variety of reasons why children are finding themselves being raised by their grandparents. So the next section that we're going to spend a little bit of time on is what's identified as the lifespan development framework. And it's a way of being able to think about all the stages that a family goes through while going through the stages of development. So just as a child starts as a newborn baby and eventually becomes a senior citizen. So just as individuals experience these various stages of development, families themselves also experience these stages of development. And the first stage is called the family of origin experiences. During this phase, the main tasks for the family members is to maintain relationships with parents, siblings, and peers, complete education, and developing the foundation of a model of family life. So again, these developmental frameworks are looked at through the eyes of child rearing and raising children. So what you have here is, again, maintaining relationship with parents, completing one's education, and developing the foundation of a model of family life. Leaving home, that's stage 2. During this phase, the main tasks that an individual would expect to get accomplished is beginning to differentiate self from family of origin and parents, and developing adult to adult relationships with parents, developing intimate peer relationships, and beginning work, developing work identity and financial independence. So this is what you might characterize as sort of the leaving the nest syndrome. This is when folks are often living independently for the very first time. They may be going to college. They may have started to work on their own. They have their own housing. They're outside of their parents' home, and so they're outside of their parents' supervision often by this point. Stage 3 is referred to as the pre-marriage stage, and during this phase, the main tasks are selecting partners, developing a relationship, and deciding to establish own home with someone. So this pre-marriage stage probably was not a big chunk of time 30 or 40 years ago, but quite frankly, now we have couples who are getting married later in life. They are choosing to start their families later in life. And so this pre-marriage stage, which is kind of a little bit past, I just left the house and now I'm living on my own, but now it's been 10 years since I've left my parents' home and I'm still living on my own. I've been in various relationships. Maybe I've bought my own home as a single person. So all of those are the pre-marriage stage, pretty well defined in terms of this is the stage that happens before a person gets married. Childless couple stage. So during this phase, the main tasks are developing a way to live together both practically and emotionally, adjusting relationships with families of origin and peers to include a partner. So this is the part where now maybe there's a partner that's involved. It may be that a person's gotten married. It may be that they're in a long-term relationship, exclusive relationship with this particular person. They are finding ways to be able to live together as a couple. Um, and that is always an interesting experience. Um, and they're also adjusting their relationship with their families of origin and peers to begin to include the partner. So, if before a lot of your relationships were with possibly other single people, now you have somebody that you bring along to events and gatherings and social gatherings, either with your family or with your friends. This is often a period of time when couples begin to socialize more with other couples. This is that period prior to children being brought into the family. Stage 5, family with young children, pretty self-explanatory. During this phase, the main tasks are realigning family systems to make space for children, adopting and developing parenting roles, realigning relationships with families of origin to include parenting and grandparenting roles, and facilitating children to develop peer relationships. So this is where parents are starting to become grandparents. Um, you yourself may be learning more and more about what your role is as a parent. Um, you're making adjustments either in your physical space, meaning maybe you need a bigger house now to be able to accommodate the fact that you have children living in the family. You may have to make adjustments in terms of your job. All sorts of different changes happen as you begin to grow and create a family. Stage 6, family with adolescents. During this phase, the main tasks are adjusting parent-child relationship to allow adolescents more autonomy, adjusting family relationships to focus on midlife, relationship and career issues, and taking on responsibility for caring for family of origins. So your children are now adolescents. They're seeking more independence, they're seeking more autonomy. You're needing to sort of learn how to trust them and to let them have that independence. Um, there may be more of a focus on what your relationship is like now with your spouse at this midlife point. And you may also be looking at career issues at this point as well. There may be more opportunities for advancement, for promotions, and you have to make that decision as to whether now is the best time to make those changes because you have less responsibility in terms of having children that need a lot of your attention and care. And now maybe there is those opportunities to advance further in your career. And then taking on responsibility for caring for families of origin. So now you, as somebody who's probably somewhere in your 30s or 40s, are beginning to have to be aware of the needs of your parents and how they may need you to help support them. Um, there may be issues of declining health, declining cognitive abilities. There may be other issues that result in them needing more support from you. And this is an interesting phase in which we call the sandwich generation. And so if you think of a sandwich, two pieces of bread with something in the middle, um, this is a place where a person is caring for both their children and their parents. So they're kind of in the middle. Their kids aren't fully independent and have not left the house yet, but the parents are needing more and more support and more care. Um, Stage 7, launching children. During this phase, the main tasks are resolving midlife issues, negotiating adult to adult relationships with children, adjusting to living as a couple again, and adjusting to including in laws and grandchildren within the family circle and dealing with disabilities, sorry guys, and death in the family of origin. This can often be a challenging time for a couple, and sometimes um, this may be the point in time where the relationship ends, or now that there aren't children in the house anymore, and there's not all of those responsibilities and duties that have to go with caring for children. Sometimes a couple has to sort of reintroduce themselves to each other and learn how to live as a couple without children, which can be a challenging and interesting and exciting time. So that's where you're negotiating adult to adult relationships with children. Your children are becoming more mature. You're having more of a relationship with them almost as a peer, as opposed to you being the parent and them being the child. You adjust to living as a couple again, as I said before. You're adjusting to including in-laws and grandchildren within the family circle. So now maybe your children are getting married, and now there's new additions to your family in terms of in-laws and grandchildren. And you may be dealing with disability and death in your family of origin. So you may be experiencing either declining health or even death in terms of your own parents. And then finally, stage 8, later family life. During this phase, the main tasks are coping with physiological decline in self and others, adjusting to children taking a more central role in family maintenance, valuing the wisdom and experience of the elderly, dealing with loss of spouse and peers, preparation for death, life review, reminiscence, and integration. So now you're at a place where, as a senior, you may be experiencing physical decline. You may be experiencing cognitive decline. Your children are needing to take on maybe more of a role in terms of planning family events and organizing family opportunities and different kinds of things like that. Hopefully people are valuing you for your wisdom and experience. You may be dealing with the loss of a spouse or peers, so death in those particular relationships, while you yourself are preparing for death, maybe doing some life reviewing, reminiscing, and really beginning to sort of integrate who am I as a senior citizen? And where do I go from here? This is often a place where people have retired from their employment. Again, they may be now a widow or a widower, so they're living alone. So this is a very, very different kind of life than what they may have been experiencing 5 years before that. And so there's a real need to try to figure out what is my life now and what do I want it to be? So what are the characteristics of a healthy family? The characteristics of a healthy family include that there's opportunity to express ideas and feelings. There's an absence of family secrets. There's valuing of everyone's opinion and feelings. There's flexible rules that are enforced with consistency. There's positive energy, and there's opportunity for growth and change. So again, a family is a place where people can feel comfortable in sharing their ideas and what they're feeling, that everyone is well respected, that their opinions are valued, that there's not a lot of secrecy in the family, um, flexible rules enforced with consistency. Parenting is all about being consistent. And while there can be flexibility, particularly as children grow older, there has to be consistency, positive energy, and opportunity for growth and change. Children are more likely to grow up to be successful adults if they have a positive, nurturing relationship with at least one caregiver. And it's interesting to note that it says just one caregiver, which means that a single parent, a grandparent, an adoptive parent, all of those would meet that characteristic of being at least one caregiver. They they thrive with consistent parenting, particularly during their first year of life. There is well-balanced discipline. So rules are set, rules are enforced. As we said before, there can be some flexibility, but we certainly do see discipline being important, but it needs to be well-balanced. At least a 2-year separation in age between siblings and access to others who can provide emotional support if their immediate families cannot do so. Interesting about the idea of a 2-year separation in age between siblings. That really is beneficial physically to the mom. Takes a while to recover from a pregnancy. Sorry, guys. But also just the idea of being able to have the time and the attention to be able to focus on one child at a time. So we're going to pause here. As I said before, this is modular 10. And there are going to be a total of 3 videos for this particular lecture. So we're going to pause here. And when we come back, we are going to talk about how are family problems defined.